Good afternoon, folks. Today's technical tutorial, we're going to be looking at the Dotty world of Yayoi Kusama. Some of you may know who Yayoi Kusama is, some of you may not. Yayoi Kusama, in my eyes, is a fascinating character, absolutely fascinating. This is going to be a lot of work and looking at repeat patterns mainly. We can see from this background image there's a lot of polka dots going on. I will give you a little bit of a background for Yayoi Kusama, and then I expect if you like this and you want to research her a little bit more, there's loads and loads and loads of links. I will provide you with some links to her work. There's loads of videos on her. Absolutely fascinating character. So before we get into the meat of this technical tutorial, I'd just like to read you out a little bit I found from Wikipedia. She's got a massive biography, but I think this summarised it quite well. Yayoi Kusama, a Japanese contemporary artist who works primarily in sculpture and installation, but is also active in painting, performance, film, fashion, poetry, fiction and other arts. Her work is based on conceptual art and shows some attributes of feminism, minimalism, surrealism, art brut, pop art and abstract expressionism, and is infused with autobiographical, psychological and sexual content. She's been acknowledged as one of the most important living artists to come out of Japan. Kusama was raised in Matsumoto and trained at the Kyoto School of Arts and Crafts in a traditional Japanese painting style called Nihonga. Kusama was inspired, however, by American abstract impressionism. She moved to New York City in 1958 and was part of the New York avant-garde scene throughout the 1960s, especially in the pop art movement. Embracing the rise of the hippie counterculture of the late 1960s, she came to public attention when she organised a series of happenings in which naked participants were painted with brightly coloured polka dots. Since the 1970s, Kusama has continued to create art, most notably installations in various museums around the world. One of the most interesting things I find is this next part. Kusama has been open about her mental health, and by choice she lives in the Seiwa Mental Hospital, and says that art has become her way to express her mental disease. She has lived now for well over 40 years by choice in a psychological hospital. She finds her work therapeutic, and her way of expressing herself is through art. I find this staggering and fascinating. If you have a look over YouTube, there's loads of videos showing her actually creating her art. I think these are just brilliant pieces. I thoroughly recommend that you go away and just have a look at some of her pieces, of her videos, of her installations and that sort of thing. How are we going to be putting this into our own pieces? Well, Yayoi Kusama's work mainly involves the use and painting of nets and polka dots, some big, some small, but often in a repeated pattern. So repeat patterns are the sort of things we're going to be looking at today, but in the style of Yayoi Kusama. These often end up looking like wallpapers, like house wallpaper. I'm going to be showing you how to create that sort of pattern and how to layer it over shapes. Then we're going to have a look at the sort of colours that she uses and how we're going to express ourselves through the use of pattern. So let's have a look at a few pieces of Yayoi Kusama's work. Okay, we start off. This is an early picture of Yayoi Kusama when she started creating some of her pieces. We can see like a horse that obviously volunteered there to get himself polka dotted up, and an early picture of Yayoi Kusama and her in a much more recent setting in one of her exhibitions on the right hand side. This is far more modern. I can't remember the date of this, I do apologise, but we can see from the start we're getting loads of this repeat pattern. If you look at these tendrils that are pushing up from the ground, they're not all the same. That's one thing that I want to make clear, is that her dots even though there is a repeat pattern running through some of these are not all the same. You see, you've got large circles, then you've got smaller circles, and then smaller circles and smaller circles the further it gets out. This isn't just going to be a case of creating one circle in a pattern, repeat it hundreds of times, done. This is going to take some thought. Okay, this is from one of her exhibitions, from one of her Infinity exhibitions. You note the use of colour, very minimal colour in this picture. Mirrors in the centre, and the repeat pattern of the polka dots all over the world, all over the walls. Again, one of her giant sculptures. This one again, note the size of the polka dots, going smaller as they go out. This is, yeah, I'd have loved to have visited this exhibition, something you can actually physically walk through. These look absolutely huge and beautiful just to be around. Another one taken from her one of her exhibitions. We see there's sculpture and installation is a massive part, and again the colour choice is very sort of minimal. Often using yellow and black. Yellow and black is a good place to start if you want to look at Yayoi Kusama, as well as red and white. She does veer off this a little bit, as we'll see as we'll see shortly, but these tend to be her colour palettes. As like I said, she veers off every so often. What you are actually looking at here is physical objects. These are lampshades that are hanging from a ceiling with mirrors all around, giving this infinity effect of these things just going on forever and ever and ever. Again, beautiful. The actual patterns in themselves, though, have their own minimal colour palette, so black and one single colour going over them, but the light shining through them makes them bright, makes them vivid, almost neon in this picture. One of Yayoi's tropes, I guess you'd say, one of her standard things that she says that she loves, that she has a complete fascination with, is the pumpkin. She paints these over pumpkins. She creates pumpkins in the visual style. She creates her own installation, her own sculptures, and then paints them in this repeat pattern again. Some of the things that are slightly up, she does do 2D work. In her 2D work, you'll see things like butterflies. We can see different sorts of patterns emerging here as well. So, like across the bodies of the butterflies, there's like this netted effect. This is what we're talking about, the net. The background is like a net. She's using larger colour palettes over the whole body, but keeping them controlled. So, like, you've got this yellow and blue on the right hand side. And my apologies for the quality of this picture. You'll probably be able to find a higher resolution version online if you look. But then, yeah, keeping this minimalism in a controlled way in the colour palette itself. Yeah, being very expressive in the beauty of these butterflies. Another one of Yayoi's loves is mushrooms. Again, we see net patterns and polka dot patterns. Nets and polka dots is the things that you are looking for specifically. So we see the polka dots again being drawn in lines, but then smaller, radiating out. This gives it almost like a 3D effect. It's just beautiful. All of Yayoi's work's hand drawn and hand created, obviously, and painted, but excuse me, we're going to be concentrating obviously on a more digital format. Another one of her pictures that of mushrooms, another study of mushrooms. Look how this mushroom on the right hand side with the red, the size of the polka dots goes from being a large one at the top and then ever decreasing into smaller circles. The patterning, all different sorts of patterning on them. How can you take influence from these? Okay, so your challenge just for today. I'd like you to get to grips with creating repeat patterns in Photoshop These may act slightly differently to those in Illustrator. I'll provide a video showing you how to create repeat patterns. You will come up with sort of repeat patterns that look a little bit like wallpapers. This is absolutely fine. I'm going to give you a freedom of expression through this. You don't have to do polka dots and nets if you don't wish. But your repeat patterns must be placed and masked over either a mushroom, flowers or vegetable shapes. Mushroom, flowers or vegetable shapes. I like to do multiple ones, please. Yeah, so 2 or 3 flowers, 2 or 3 mushrooms, 2 or 3 vegetables, anything like that. You can do as many as you like, but don't just do one. I think one that's a little bit slack. So these designs should be inspired and influenced by Yayoi Kusama. Keep in mind these 3 pictures when you're doing it. These should be your influence of how you can create a Yayoi Kusama inspired piece using repeat patterning. Okay, best of luck. I look forward to seeing what you come up with. I'll be looking through these tonight, and I will give you some feedback tomorrow on them. Okay then, thank you very much.